I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Engineering Equipment Committee of the Vallecitos Water District for Monday, March 8th, 2021 at 3 p.m. So since there's no public, I'll dispense with reading the COVID-19 statement. And I guess I'll hand over the agenda to you, Glenn.
Okay, we have a few updates today, and as you noticed, there were no information provided before the meeting, but we do have PowerPoints for them, and they'll be made available after the meeting. And we're going to go through quite a few staff members here with the updates, and I think the first item, the Sage Canyon tank update, is going to be given by Lito. So Lito, why don't you jump in?
So Sage Canyon tank is our next project. Is going to be our next project for as far as tank rehabilitation. It's in the heart of San Elijo, off Stephanie Court and San Elijo Road. It serves the 877 elevation. It's right across from the junior high there. Tank was built back in 2001 as San Elijo was being developed. Holds over 3.7 million gallons. We anticipate a full rehab. As you guys can see in the or as the directors can notice in the slide here, there's quite a bit of damage in the rafters, and then the overall rafter picture here, you can see extensive damage in the rafters. So this project will require both full rehab of the interior and exterior, as well as rafter replacement, structural repairs as needed, equipment upgrades, upgrading some of the hatch work in the latches, safety safety climbing equipment. Overall budget is $1.03 million. We're currently in the design, and we will be in construction hopefully by the end of this year in November. Directors, do you have any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Did we get a proposal just to patch the bad areas? I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it looks like there's a half a dozen, 10 that I can see in the photos.
Unfortunately, once the epoxy coating starts becoming worse, or deteriorating, the rest of the tank also becomes an issue. And this is just an example of the deterioration. It's pretty bad, and it was originally painted and coated back in 2001, so it's just it's the end of its life cycle.
Director Hernandez, also, these are just some sample pictures. There's actually, if you look at the report, there's delamination and issues throughout the tank, but also back in the early 2000s, really anything up to about 2010 or so, the Air Pollution Control District changed the rules, and there were no VOCs or limited VOCs allowed. So in other words, they couldn't have as many solvents in the paint. So the paint manufacturers did what they can, and all the tanks that were coated and built around that time were seeing the same issue. Now there's a different type of coatings. Like I think we're using a zinc primer above the water line that's more corrosion resistant to that vapor layer. But back then, when they're going to full solid paint or low VOC paints, the paints really didn't hold up. And that's what we're really running into, because the rules were made by the Air Pollution Control District to basically limit the amount of VOCs, but they didn't have the technology and the painting available yet to really stand the test of time. And that's why you've seen several tanks come through the board with pretty significant deterioration, where we're actually losing metal too.
Oh, okay.
So this is just an updated item. This will be going to the board in the future. And when we have that, we'll obviously have more information for it.
Hey, James, could you or Lito talk a little bit more about the study that was done that determined the extent of the problems?
Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead and talk about the dive inspection and anything else that we did on it.
Yes. So as part of our maintenance, routine maintenance, the tanks get dove and inspected. And in the last report, it has been determined the most effective way to rehabilitate the tank is to do a full rehab. It's not just pictures, but it's fully ongoing, diving under the water and looking for what's really going on under all the circumstances and evaluation.
Yeah. So we operations routinely dives the tanks. I forgot the cycle, if it's every 2 or 3 years. And then they do it per an AWWA standard. And then every now and then we actually take the tanks down and we clean them out. And so the dive shows us a good indication of how the coating's going, but they can't really see everything. And when we clean the tank out, that's really when we kind of see how well the dive inspection goes. In general, the dive inspection has been fairly accurate everywhere below the water line, but the tanks aren't full. We filled them up quite a bit, so they have a hard time seeing above the water line.
James, do you use a boat to check on the rafters? That's what we used to do.
Yeah, they put a little float boat in there, but with the cone tops, obviously towards the end they could see it, and I don't know if they could really stand in the boat or not, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they do put a float boat on there, and I think now they have like even a mount on the camera to get closer to kind of hold it up, and then kind of do a camera inspection afterwards. But they don't have the ability to kind of pick at it to see how loose the coating is like they do underwater.
Okay.
But
so this one was built in 2001. I assume there hasn't been anything done to it.
No, this is the first time for this tank.
All right. And so what is, you said we dive them every 2 to 3 years. Are we on kind of a schedule for interior and exterior?
Yeah. So the exterior, the ops guys do kind of more of a visual inspection for chalking and everything else of the tank and coating. The dive inspection, Ed's group or Sean, our water production group, they take care of that. And I can't remember the cycle if it's 2, 3, 4 years, but I know there's an AWWA guideline. They kind of just follow that guideline for tank diving. And there's also a Department of Health Service guideline. So they follow the lesser of the two. My memory's 2 to 3 years, but I could be off.
I think it's every 3 years.
Yeah, so that's inspection. What about the actual recoats? Are you on kind of a standardized schedule?
Yeah. We did a kind of a back. It's been a while, but basically a tank schedule for rehabilitation, and we're kind of on a 10 to 12 year cycle. We push them out to 15 at times when the coating's good, especially on the exterior. But the interior is usually 7 to 10. We're hoping the new coatings last closer to 12, but they're new, so we'll find out. The manufacturer's promises that they'll outlast the old coatings, but again, nobody's used them for that long yet because they've only been out for 5 to 7 years.
Right. All right. Any other questions, Director Hernandez?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
All right, our second item, we're going to go over to the wastewater side of the house and talk about the the emergency bypass. And I think Ryan's going to take that.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager Prohm. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to present today 2 very important projects that are critical infrastructure projects for the district on the wastewater side of things. And although they are budgeted for these projects in the CIP, they are also driven by regulatory spills, specifically in our history with regulatory agencies and the risk associated with future spills if we continue to have them, what that might imply for the district. So first project I'm going to start with is the emergency bypass sewer, and it's highlighted in the box in red on your screen. The emergency bypass is a 16-inch diameter techite pipeline. Techite is it's a reinforced polymer material which was manufactured in the 70s. This is an early 80s era installed pipeline. Techite is known within the industry to essentially be junk pipe. It's associated with a lot of breaks if improper bedding. Backfill was associated with the project. It typically had a rupture at some point in its history if that was the case. The district has experienced some recent spills with the Techite line, which I'll talk about in a minute. But as you can see, it actually begins on South Rancho Santa Fe Road, and it runs through district easements all the way over to Melrose, where it then bends and then veers, starts to traverse down Poinsettia. Further on down the line, which we'll talk about the Buena Reach failsafe in a moment. The failsafe pipeline is actually the magenta or pink line that you see on your screen next to the green line. The green line is actually the bypass. And just a special note, these pipelines run in parallel with one another through the easements, roughly separated by about 5 feet or so. And that's important for what I'm going to talk about in a little bit here. Just a closer enlarged plan look at the corridor, the alignment corridor with South Rancho Santa Fe, all the way over to Melrose Drive. We broke this project down into 2 phases. Phase 1 being the less environmentally impacted of the 2. Phase 2 has some serious environmental impacts, and also it's topographically challenged. Our easement is on the side of a very steep embankment up to this condominium complex here. And it provides some really unique constructability issues on this project. The line in green is the fail-safe alignment, which comes from Meadowlark. Fail-safe conveys recycled water to the ocean outfall. The bypass conveys raw sewage influent that's coming in from lift station 1. It's actually a relief sewer, and it's sending flows away from Meadowlark, influent flows away from Meadowlark and on to Encina through the land outfall. So one conveys recycled, the other conveys raw sewage. We'll talk about this more in a moment, but that just gives you a general understanding of the project alignment. Here's where you see some of the recent spills in the last 5 years, specifically SSO numbers 2, 4, and 1, shown on the bottom of half of the screen there, are associated with the bypass and the failsafe throughout this corridor. There's actually one that's not shown that happened in 2018 on this east side of Brighton Glen. And Capital Facilities Engineer Santos was involved in that project when it happened, and the ongoing conversations around the homeowners association at the Brighton Glen development there, which I know General Manager Pruitt has also been involved with. This project is really multifaceted. As I mentioned, it is a critical infrastructure to the district, and it provides a unique benefit in the fact that the failsafe pipeline is just right next door, so that if we're rehabilitating one, it doesn't take a whole lot of extra work just to go ahead and do the other one that's right next door. Some key issues and project objectives associated with the emergency bypass include primarily we're unable to operate the bypass as it was intended. We have it valved off, and if we were ever to use it, we would do so with bated breath and watching very closely in case some spills were to occur. Regulatory compliance risk with the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board. Due to the spill history, future fines will be levied to a greater extent than what we've witnessed thus far. The existing alignment conflicts, both environmentally and topographically. And there's actually no manholes installed on this line currently, either one of them. There's no access points. If we wanted to go out and perform a maintenance, very hard to do so, if not impossible. The sections of the pipeline at certain locations underneath the roadways are typically 20 feet deep, providing a constructability issue. And it's also the city of Carlsbad utilities, including wet and dry utilities along the project corridor, provide some key issues and constructability challenges on this project. So what have we done so far? Staff internally produced a feasibility study to really provide a basis of project design, laid out all the operational history, all these objectives we discussed, environmental CEQA services needed from some of our as needed. We pulled in our survey mapping consultant along with our environmental consultant who've already done the background investigations and are ready to go with submitting the first round of CEQA documentation and notices of exemption. We've decided that it'd be in the district's best interest to bring on a design consultant to take us to final design using our feasibility study and additional background information. We invited 3 firms on February 16th to propose. Proposals were just received last week on March 3rd from 2 consultants, NV5 and IEC. We completed the proposal eval, and we are going to come. We're going to attempt to come on March 17th to the board of directors with a recommendation for final design and bid phase services from one of our consultants who we discussed today earlier with District Engineer Gumpel. Furthermore, schedule overall looks like we will wrap up final design in the summer of 2021, move into construction in the fall, winter of 2021, and have project acceptance, I say, before the 2022 rain season, which basically means ideally December, January of 2022, this project will be accepted or completed at least.
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Sorry, and just to add to that, that 2022 data, the winter season before 2022 is important because can you just go back to the map with the SSOs really quick? So those spills, when we had to turn in the reasoning and the remedies for spills, one of the things that we turned in is one of the questions from the regional board is, how are you going to remedy this situation? So staff's response is within a certain period of time, which takes us out into 2022, we're going to have to rehabilitate this line because obviously the line is prone to breaks. And even though if you look at SSO number 5 and number 3, even though they're not part of this bypass line, they're part of what we call siphon A of their outfall. When we put flow into this bypass line, it puts additional pressure on the outfall line. And it basically creates a backup in the or a potential for backup. So that's one of the other reasons. So we're getting infiltration in this line. The line can't handle pressure, and one of our regulatory requirements is to get this fixed basically before the rainy season in 2022.
Hey, Ryan, you mentioned the proximity of the 2 lines provides an opportunity to work on both at the same time, but the schedule you showed was only talking about the bypass sewer. Could you clarify a little bit? When we come to the board on the 17th, is that just for the bypass line?
No, yeah, thank you for following up on that. As part of our feasibility study, it provides a value, a scale of economy, of, I guess, value savings by doing both at the same time. Because the large majority of the cost of completing this project in construction is the mobilization and the setup, the excavation and shoring and backfill and compaction. So the fact that these lines are right next to each other. Also, I didn't mention the 12-inch fail-safe is a ductile iron pipeline. It's not techite, however, its age, it's very prone to corrosion through external forces and soils, but also internally, it's very likely the pipe is tuberculated or corroded from the inside. And I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute when I talk about the Buena reach of the same pipeline, the failsafe. And you'll see some of these ductile iron pipe pictures it looks like Swiss cheese, where there's just holes in the ductile iron on the side of the pipe wall. And it's like that longitudinally, for different reasons. So they're both critical assets to the district infrastructure system. They provide basically different sources of flow relief to Meadowlark, both on the influent side and the effluent side. and neither one of them we can really use with much confidence right now, or if any.
Yeah, just take the names. One's called the bypass and one called the failsafe. So they're both pretty important to us, especially to the operations of Meadowlark.
I have a question on the fail-safe line. That can only convey tertiary reclaim, or can it also convey secondary?
No, it can actually convey secondary or tertiary, and it has a
Okay.
connection directly to the EY alpha.
Gotcha.
And just to clarify, also the bypass is used not only to basically reroute and take away flows from lift station 1. We can always shut off lift station 1, but also Lake San Marcos lift station, because there's no way to shut off Lake San Marcos lift station because it's in the bottom. It's basically a bowl. But if Meadowlark is too full, then we could shut off. Basically, we could reroute flow from Lake San Marcos to the failsafe also.
Okay.
So we'll be coming back to the board with a professional services agreement, hopefully next meeting. Senior engineer Morgan and I actually had a quick meeting with the consultant. Basically, we're fast tracking this. We received proposals last week. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yes.
And they've already been reviewed, and we're already working with the consultant to clarify their scope. And we're already in the middle of starting to draft up a staff report at this point. We're not there yet because everything's happening pretty fast, but we also know the importance of this project and we want to get it on schedule.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know, Ryan, you didn't completely answer where I was going with my question. So the title on this slide you're showing is Emergency Bypass Sewer, and we're talking about what we're doing. Is the work that's going to be awarded to either NV5 or IEC also going to include the failsafe, or is their scope going to be just for the bypass?
No, it's going to include the failsafe. We are, it's going to have a budgetary, impact there a little bit, and it'll probably increase the total amount of construction. But as I mentioned, it's mostly in the rehab technology, and it's not in. We get a value of savings by taking advantage of the work of the bypass, by going ahead and moving forward, but also doing the fail-safe. So I might have to rewrite that budget page description a little bit on this year's budget so that it actually maybe says and fail-safe as well.
Yeah.
So, or, we don't just call it the bypass.
And for the directors, this is going to be, especially phase 1, it's going to be primarily, or we're hoping it's going to be primarily a slip lining project. Is that correct, Ron?
That's correct. We're hoping there's one point repair that we know that we have to dig and fix. But beyond that, we can make that an access point for the rehab technology. And this project will primarily be trenchless rehab.
What kind of material would that slip line be? Would that be like polyethylene or something?
It will be a form of cured in place pipe, CIPP. There might be sections where we could get away with gravity sewer CIPP, and there might be sections where we actually have to thicken the wall a little bit and go with a pressurized CIPP liner. That'll be part of the work with the consultant, is determining where that transition will occur.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
So Ryan, that covered both items 2 and 3, that portion?
No, we
Okay,
still have more for 3, I believe.
okay.
That was just 2. Okay, that was just the bypass. Now, this is further downstream. This is item 3, shifting gears on you. This is the fail-safe ductile iron pipe. Further on downstream, this is the Buena Reach shared by Buena Sanitation District. It spans from Yarrow Road, shown on your screen, to Aviara Parkway in Carlsbad. The line meanders through public right-of-way and roadways. It goes off into a business complex. There's sections where it goes through some environmental sensitive habitat. It actually runs underneath the building and it comes back out eventually onto Palomar Airport Road, where it runs in the median all the way down to the intersection or to the Carlsbad tie-in, which ends the Buena Reach. Further on downstream of that, it's the Carlsbad Reach, if I believe so. So that gives you a basis of understanding of where this is at. This, again, is the fail-safe. It is ductile iron. Here's one of the pictures I talked about earlier, with a large section of the sidewall missing. This rupture happened at Palomar Oaks Drive, right there by the business complex, right kind of out on the curb line. There's some hotels in the area as well. As you can see on the excavation on the left, crews are down pretty deep. Say this is about 10 feet, 10 to 12 feet deep, overhanging the concrete sidewalk slab there. This is just inconvenient, when it happens. A lot of times our crews are not able to excavate this deep, or conditions exist that they can't perform it. So we will bring in a emergency contractor to perform the work and repair it. 2 of them of late happened in December 2018, and then April of 2020. I believe April was the Easter holiday break. Typically happens under really heavy rains, deluge events, storm events, when these types of breaks will happen. Some key issues and project objectives with this one. Again, it's regulatory driven. It's not just a budget item. Breaks and spills, break history, the water board, regulatory compliance. Again, access points, no manholes exist. And just to follow up on that a little bit, part of our scope and design is going to be to leave behind manholes, permanent access points for O&M. So that's another operational advantage to this project, is we're actually going to fix that problem. Again, trenchless rehab for the most part, avoiding environmentally sensitive areas. We are going to perform abandoned and replace operation at Palomar Oaks to move our line out of some very precarious locations adjacent to foundations of structures. And as I mentioned, in some cases, in one case specifically, it goes underneath the building. We're going to go ahead and fix that and put it out in the public right away on the street. Working with City of Carlsbad, biologists, and utilities again. And then the agreement with the Buena Sanitation District, I'm going to let Susan discuss this in her part in a little bit later. But the agreement with Buena Sanitation District is a key issue to the success of this project. Stakeholders and schedule, just to recap, the Buena Reach, it's 50% owned. Stakeholders Vallecitos, 50% Buena Sanitation. Carlsbad has no stake in the Buena Reach. So far, we have awarded the design professional services agreement in October of 2020 to NV5. Final design is anticipated in the summer, around June this summer. Bid phase will be roughly through August, and construction roughly September to January. Right around the same time frame, January 2022, before the rain season. That's critical. So these are 2 really fast-tracked projects, and realizing that some of the scope has crept on this one in a similar manner to the other one, where we're incorporating the fail-safe, but this time we have a large remove and replace section, or abandon and replace, where we're actually going to open trench and install a new pipeline in a significant amount of this project along Palomar Oaks. So that's going to drive up the cost a little bit. And these are budgetary estimates right now. I haven't refined this yet, but all told, it's looking like it's going to essentially increase the joint responsibility of Buena and Vallecitos to roughly 1.5 million by the end of it. And that includes planning and design, the construction, staff services, overhead. And And again, that's just a preliminary look. Some of these staff numbers are maybe not realistic, but with that scope creep, I just wanted to include some buffer there.
And
And that is it on that agenda item.
And before we go on to the next one, if I could add a little bit of context. So the outfall and the fail-safe, the committee and the board is going to be hearing a lot about it through whether it's rehab or whether it's replacement or fix. There's several projects that's currently in the budget that the committee and the board will be hearing probably over the next 2-3 years, maybe even longer, hopefully over the next 2-3 years. And both those pipelines, the fail-safe and the outfall, were built in the early 80s. 82 is my memory. I could be off a year or so there. And it was built in conjunction of the expansion of Metal Arc into treatment plant, from basically being a tiny little thing to about a 2 MGD treatment plant back in the 80s. They're both built basically when ductile iron was the material of choice. But what we've discovered, obviously, is where you're completely pressurized and there's no air in the pipe, ductile iron actually holds up fairly well unless there's some type of external corrosion from some error, whether it's human error or otherwise. But in areas like the failsafe where the pipe is primarily empty, and then when we use it, it fills up, and then it's empty again, and there's air, it's really not the right material to use, and we're seeing fairly large corrosion. And now with the rains and with the time, since this pipe is basically about its age limit for a pipe like this, we're seeing more and more failure points on it. So it's due. We're doing condition assessment. We're doing replacement on these pipes, and both the committee and the board are going to hear more from probably Susan and Ryan over the next coming years of different sections, because it's a big pipe and we can't take the bite all at once, so we have to take smaller bites of it.
James, what's the interior lining for the ductile iron?
So, in modern day, right, you'd use a epoxy glass line for anything sewer to protect that ductile iron. This one is just the normal tar lining that they use, just the tar infused cement lining that's like, real thin.
So the hydrogen sulfide's eating away at the cement.
Absolutely.
board.
Yeah, it's a completely wrong line. It's a concrete-based lining, which hydrogen sulfide loves to eat at anyway. It becomes food for it, and then you got exposed metal. So it's the worst of both worlds, so to speak.
Yeah.
Question. Doesn't the district now have a standard of a manhole every 300 or 500 feet?
Yes, and we've had that for a gravity sewer, but the outfall in the 1980s was a different type of pipe. The outfall itself does have manholes every 5 to 600 or 700 feet, depending on the length, or even less. Our standard's more 300 to 400 for in-track or normal gravity sewers. The fail-safe, though, is a closed system pipe, or was. It won't be after we're done, after we get through all the sections of it. So the fail-safe is a closed system pipe. So there's siphons and gravity sections, but it's technically a closed system. With this project, we'll be putting in permanent access points. Some of those access points could be pressurized. The reason why it's a closed system pipe is it's either empty, or sometimes you're pumping a little bit. It could be partially full. Sometimes you're pumping a lot, and more of it could be full. So it's hard to predict where it would be full or not. Knowing what we know now, there are sections that definitely could have had normal access points and sections that can, and we're using that knowledge along with our models to try and figure out where to put those access points.
Okay.
All right, so I think that's all we had for this item, and this item also both the committee and board will be seeing more of coming up.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. I wanted to give the directors a quick update on where we are with the agreement for the fail-safe. The fail-safe, as we mentioned, has been in place since around 1980, 82, 81. The agreement that was entered into upon building that pipeline in 1981, and it was between 3 agencies. It was with Buena Sanitation District, which is the city of Vista's district, and the city of Carlsbad. Based upon the different reaches, as we've talked about, there's a different ownership capacity and cost sharing that's aligned with that capacity. So it's a 3 MGD pipeline. The San Marcos reach, 26,000 feet, is 100% Vallecitos with no contribution between Buena or Carlsbad. And then the Buena reach, which we've talked about, is 50-50 with Buena Sanitation District in Vallecitos. And then the final leg of it is a 3-way split, with actually the majority of it being covered by the city of Carlsbad, and then equally remaining between Buena and Vallecitos.
Just to clarify, that 3 MGD is actually the Vallecitos only portion capacity and limit. So the pipeline gets larger as you go further downstream, and the other agencies connect to it.
Yes, thank you. And here's a graphic that you may have seen when we've talked about the land outfall and the fail-safe, to give you an idea of where as we mentioned, the 2 pipelines, and we'll be talking about these 2 pipelines, like James said, over the next few years. And the Buena reach is that middle section there, that's covered 50-50 with Vista, and is the area that Ryan was just talking about, the rehab work that's going on. Vista, or Buena Sanitation District, has requested to be withdrawn from this agreement. The provisions of the agreement are that Vista and Carlsbad would pay proportionally for operation, maintenance, continuing rehab, and keeping the pipeline functional. The pipeline asset is owned by Vallecitos, same actually with the land outfall pipeline as well. So Buena has requested to be removed from the agreement. They are not using the pipeline. They haven't used the pipeline for quite some time, and they would like to discontinue participation. So with that, we've done some preliminary discussions. General Manager Prum has had some preliminary discussions and looked at what may be involved with that changing of the agreement. And what we're going to be doing going forward is we're going to be looking at the costs of returning the pipeline to a like new condition, assessing the O&M costs, future O&M costs, rehab and depreciation into a net present value, coming up with some kind of a cost estimate that we can use as a starting point for discussions with Buena to have them removed from this agreement. And at that point, then the percentage ownership and cost sharing would be based upon the 2 remaining agencies that are part of this. So the Buena reach would become 100% Vallecitos, I assume, and going forward. So that's where we are. It is preliminary at this time. It has something, just a subject that's been broached by Buena going forward on this pipeline.
So Buena historically has put plenty of flow into this pipeline through their Shadow Ridge plant, but their Shadow Ridge plant has been mothballed for quite some time. So they have no more use for it, but they understand the agreement. They understand that they can't get out of the agreement for free. And they understand that we're looking at rehabbing the pipe. So they've committed verbally at this point to doing the cost sharing 50-50. And then we are working on what the exit plan looks like. So both General Manager Prum and I have been working with Buena on kind of what that is going to look like. Now, for us to move forward with this project within the agreement, Buena has to agree to everything. So we can't just spend the money and force them to pay 50-50. So they're looking at getting this agreement in place, giving us the appropriate funds, which will pay for this rehabilitation that makes this pipe in like new condition, and any other deal points that we agree to, and then looking to exit. So they also understand that any failures on this pipe, they're 50% liable for not only the cost of repair, but also the fines that are associated if we do spill. So both agencies are motivated to fix this pipe. Both agencies are motivated to move forward with the agreement. It's just getting into the details of what that looks like. We're not there yet, but this is something that we'll be going back to the board on, I'm sure, as soon as we start getting some more clarity of what that's going to look like. I think that's all for this portion of it, Susan, unless you had anything else. So if there's any questions on the Buena failsafe agreement or the Buena failsafe rehabilitation?
I didn't have any other. How about you, Director Hernandez?
Nope.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, moving on to the last item, which is the a little bit of a chit chat really about GIS enhancements that we're going to be undertaking over the next year, 2 years, and just wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are on that effort. So I'm going to share my screen for a different PowerPoint. What am I doing? Here we go. All righty. And from beginning. All right. So enhancing our GIS and our maintenance management system for our field staff. And just quick overview of where this is in the overall asset management program components. GIS is particularly focused on where our assets are located. And of course, the maintenance management system, Maximo, is our maintenance program. And those two applications work tightly together to document and track all of the locations and what type of repair work we're doing on all of our assets. So quickly, what is GIS? It stands for Geographical Information System. It has two major components. The one that you're most accustomed to seeing, and oftentimes you'll see it in the background of the different PowerPoints and the different exhibits that we show you, is what's called the spatial, which is just meaning the map, spatial orientation, visualization of where all of our assets are located. This graphic here is showing you where this is the water system. So the blue lines are the water pipes, the reds valves, or fire service, etc., the valves, and all of our assets are represented in the GIS, including the assets that are inside of treatment plants. The GIS also contains what's called attribute data, which is specification type data that is contained on all of the assets. And for example, you know, the diameter of a pipe, the manhole number, what depth it's at, etc. All of that is contained in in a tabular function as well, so that we can use that to run reports and analyze what the different asset types that we have. This type of data is replicated in the maintenance management system. So currently, how do our field folks do their repair work and preventive maintenance work in the field? So this here is a graphic of the business process for doing work. And this area here that's circled is the work crew. And what it shows you is that, you know, they create work, they create follow-up work orders, they complete the work, they make notes, they note what materials are used in services, they do labor entry, etc. Currently, nearly all of this documentation, all of this information transfer to our field crews is done while our field crews are in the office. There's a few supervisors that may have laptops in the field where they can get into the Maxima system, but for the most part, this is done information's transferred while they're in the office, and then our work crews return to the office at the end of the day to make their notes, record again what they used, how long it took, etc. And this is the type of form and the screens that they work on. This is straight screenshots out of our Maximo maintenance management system. It's a great system when you're sitting at a computer, a regular computer with a mouse, and have a big screen to work from. It's designed for that type of use. You can go through these different tabs and enter your data, and using your mouse, go from what field you may need to enter information on and skip around again with a user interface that's really based on you looking at a large computer screen with a mouse input device. So you can understand how that makes it challenging, even as the supervisors might try to use that interface out in the field. It's really not developed or intended to be used in that way. It's also, if I can go back real quick, there's no mapping here. So wherever this particular asset is located, you don't have a picture of it on a map. So what is our goal going forward? We would like to make a mobile solution that's available to our field folks to use while they're out in the field. This here is just a possibility. I'm going to show you a couple different screens of just possibilities. There's a lot of different software out there to get to the same type of solution. Going forward, one of our main work efforts over the next year will be to determine our true requirements and then look at the different software packages that are available to us and come up with the best solution. Overall, the majority of them will have an ability to represent our assets on the GIS map. They'll be the staff will in the field will be able to see the work orders. These little, I don't know what those little brown things are. Like, oh, they're cones. Okay. These little cones here represent work orders. As you can see here on the right, where they're talking like that one is a main break, and it just pops up. It shows them where they are. This particular one shows them where other work orders are surrounding the particular work order that they're looking at. Other options for mobile solutions are certainly requirements that will give us easy to enter forms that allow us to collect information from folks in the staff quickly, easily, and in a format that's easy, simplified screens. This screen group over here, which is shown on both a phone, a mobile phone, and an iPad. As you can see, it's just really visually simplified. It's a touch screen, so staff can just touch it. They don't have to have an input device like a mouse. On the left here is a similar but different software that also is an easy to enter form. So these are the sorts of solutions we'll be looking at. You can see here on this one on the right, they've got little visual aids to highlight where different work orders are. This is a valve exercise work order, tells them when to do it, its criticality, and it's just a very simplified way to interact with folks who are out in the field trying to get the work done. This gentleman up here on the left is what we don't want to do, which is scribbling things down on a piece of paper. So our goal is to have continuous access to all of the asset maintenance manuals, as-built, repair history, all right there at the fingertips of our field folks, all of the workers and supervisors out there. Simplified data entry forms so that we get good data. As you know, I've talked about the value of our data for asset management. Well, that starts with getting that data entered. So this would allow us to get that data collected very effectively and with not too much pain on the side of the field folks. They would also be able to submit work requests, They'll be able to update asset information if they find something incorrect in the GIS. They can just make note of it and make a mark right on the screen. It optimizes the use of time in the field. So our folks would be doing the majority of their data entry as they're working in the field, eliminating some of the time that is now required for them to come back into the office at the end of the day and enter that data into the maintenance system. So it will make them more efficient. It will increase the accuracy of the information we collect. And it will give them also the extra benefit of having the information right available to them. They're not going to have to run back to the office or look something up back at a computer. So for them, it will give them a way to do their job easier as well. And let me stop sharing or come back. And that's what our plans are. Again, over the next 2 years, we plan to get this implemented and into the hands of all of our field folks. Any questions?
Really quick to the directors, I can't emphasize this enough. The maintenance and the data of the maintenance is not only to optimize and work smarter, so to speak, it's also the foundation of our future asset management program. Having that good data going in and making it easy, being able to look on a map, seeing how your work lays out, being able to click on the actual meter or the actual valve and getting all the information right there in the field is going to help really increase efficiency and also increase tracking of what did we do to that valve, what type of work, how many hours do we spend repairing this valve, and also help us make decisions of, why is this valve breaking? Do we need to replace this valve or do we keep on repairing it? Those type of things where we could really do more efficiently with less people, with less equipment, is really, this is the foundation. We need to have this foundation built. And to do that, we're not doing this in a vacuum. We're working with several departments. Operations is directly involved. IT is directly involved. At the end of the day, finance will have to be directly involved because the software, it will only work if we have buy-in from the people who are actually doing the work.
James,
Go ahead, Director.
okay, yeah, I was just curious, will finance be tied into it in order to receive cost information? Will there be some kind of link?
So we haven't worked out all that, and Susan, you could jump in if I get anything wrong here, but we are going to be working in both the labor hours and the equipment and material into our system. So for the rule that we kind of talk about is 80%. So 80% of the work we do, if we have a plan work, we know it takes a 3-man crew, 4 hours, and these are the bolts, gaskets, seals, and equipment that need to do it. We're going to tie it into our warehousing system, tie that labor directly into our finance system, tie the material and equipment into our finance system. So it's automatic. Everybody will have the option to go in and adjust it if it wasn't standard. But that's kind of what we're building our goal to, that 80% rule. And it will tie in. At the end of the day, we're going to tie in as much as we can with the finance system. But the finance system itself exists for a different reason, for our billing and our tracking and everything else. So there's only so much we can do.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, you're preaching to the choir here. I think it's a good solution, and I think it's really necessary.
I agree. Have you talked to any of the other water districts as to the programs they're using or looking at as well?
Yeah. Thank you, Director Hernandez. That's a great question. Yes, in fact, we have. We spoke, myself and our IT supervisor, Matias Libera, met with Contra Costa Water District last week. And they shared with us the solution they use, which is the one on the right here. They're extremely pleased with it. They also use Maximo as their primary maintenance system. And they are currently about fully implemented to all of their work groups. And they've had great success, and the folks in the field are appreciating it, and they are pleased with it. And we'll continue to talk with other districts that use Maximo. We're coordinating that with our Maximo support contractor to connect with some of these other districts and learn from their experience, see what they've found success with, and really use that, because of course it's critical that we provide a solution that the field folks really find valuable to them, so that we have good buy-in and support. So wherever we can learn from other districts, we'll be doing that.
And
Well, the reason
Director Hernandez, we also met with Lake Elsinore, Sweetwater Authority, and Eastern Municipal Water District in the past, which are maximal users, and they're all moving towards this type of solution. Some of them are ahead of us, some of them are behind us, but they're all moving towards this type of solution.
Well, of course, the interesting one for me would be Olivenhain and Helix. We're kind of always in a tussle back and forth who's got better what. I don't know if you've talked to them or what they're doing, or are they still using the chisel and the stone?
Livenine has an asset management and CMMS software, but it's not a full-blown system like we have Maximal, so it has limits, and they're using it well within their limits. I'm not aware what Helix is using.
Okay. Well, we always like to go nanner to leave it. So let us know.
We'll look into that for sure.
Hey,
Okay.
James, as we move forward to implement all these really great ideas, how are we tracking them budgetarily? Is it a separate line item in the budget that the board will be asked to approve?
Yeah, so some of it for the IT soft will be coming through the IT budget once we vet it out, because software is not cheap. It comes with licensing. So we're taking our time and working with our IT supervisor to really vet it and figure out, we want to make sure it's useful. We want to make sure it is a solution, because as soon as we go down that road and spend not only staff time, consultant time, and also the software time, then we're kind of married to it for a while. And we'll be coming through the different, mainly through the IT budget for it, but it'll be a line item that we could point out.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's all we had today, right, staff?
That's it. Yep.
All right.
Oh, great. A lot of good information. I really appreciate it. Any other questions, Director Hernandez?
I have a question that I'd like to get an update on. What's going on with our solar on Lift Station 1?
Ryan, go ahead. I know you're more aware of the actual schedule than I am.
Solar at Lift Station 1 is actually, solar has been good at Lift Station 1. It's on schedule, and we actually just on March 2nd, we had a planned shutdown, and we re-energized with the new panel and improvements, and everything is online. We're not producing commercially yet because both sites are not up and running, but the good news is now we just have to finish off the reservoir site, and hopefully we're still waiting on the SCG&E final design. They've been extremely difficult to work with, actually. SCG&E has, but we are pushing them along as quickly as possible.
Well, so that I understood that clearly, both systems are up and finished. We're still just waiting for SDG&E.
Yes.
Classic.
The only thing basically to do at Lift State at Twin Oaks is just turn the switch, which entails a week-long shutdown where they're going to make improvements on the switch gear, and then when they re-energize, it'll all be up and running.
So we're waiting on an upgrade on the switch gear at Twin Oaks. Is that what I heard?
No, we're basically waiting on SCG&E. Once we're ready to make the switch at any time the SCG&E is ready, but we can't do it until SCG&E is done with their work and they give us the green light. So once they do, it'll take about a week.
Well, yeah, but unfortunately, this is classic MO for SDG&E that I've worked with for 40 years. They're
Yes.
slow, and particularly in this instance where it doesn't benefit them, they're selling power to us. So I think somebody needs to be delegated to go put a boot in their ass, because this is just going to continue. We've had, I know Twin Oaks has just been up recently, but not Twin Oaks, but Lift Station 1. But Twin Oaks has been up for months,
Yeah.
They didn't have to do the same level of improvement at lift station one. The work to be done at the reservoirs is significant. We actually have escalated it internally with SDG&E to take it up to the management level. At least the solar provider has. It's really in the solar provider's best interest to get this project done. It's hurting them more than it's hurting us. It actually provides a slight benefit to us based on the rates and the time of use planning. There's a slight benefit to us starting up later, but we're certainly not trying to delay things at all. We are pushing SDG&E along, and I have that similar experience working with SDG&E. It can be very difficult, and then take that and multiply it by the pandemic.
Yeah.
There's zero level of response. We won't get phone calls returned. We won't get emails returned. It is difficult to work with them.
Yes,
Like-
but I want the directors to come away with that since the contract, the power purchase agreement doesn't start until both sites are up. Our consultant has double checked the math, and we're not being harmed at all. If anything, we have a very slight benefit, but we're not being harmed at all. So the 20 years of production doesn't start until we get the green light. The fact that they're 6 months, 8 months delayed, it just delays the back end of it. And if you think about with SDG&E cost escalation, we actually receive slightly more benefit.
Okay.
James, does the district's account manager at SDG&E get involved with projects at all? I found with SoCal Edison that the account managers were helpful in kind of kicking things along sometimes.
Yes and no. So my experience with our account manager for the first 10 years I was here at Vallecitos, so basically to about 2015, was they were extremely helpful. It's somewhere between 2017, 2018, right around maybe 2016, 2017. Our new accounts manager sat down with Robert showing us, because Robert and I work on the rates of what, putting our pump stations at the proper rates to give the biggest savings. And typically we work with the accounts manager on analyzing it and figuring out what works best based on how we're actually using the facility. The new accounts manager basically told us that the SDG&E's new rule is the accounts manager is there just as an advisor and no longer there for support. So I've actually called our accounts manager twice now on this project, and they said that they will kind of put a call in, but they really have no influence on that side of the house.
Yeah, that's pretty lousy customer service. Maybe we can do something about
and
that.
is there, who does, if there's a pressure point to be applied, where would we look to see if there's someone we know amongst all of our connections that we might be able to put some pressure on?
I'll have to look into that. I don't really know. The accounts manager is the person that usually I go to, and then but they refuse to give me anybody above them's email or contact information. So they say they'll take care of it. But that's about it. Now, to be fair, I've only really given 2 calls, because when I was reassured from Ryan and also our consultant, Terra Verde, that this is not harming us, I stopped putting pressure on our accounts manager.
Well, not harming us is one thing, but it's not helping us either. So, we can go on this for years without it harming us. So that's an unacceptable answer. So
well, it's slightly helping us.
Oh, okay. Slightly. Yeah, I appreciate slightly.
Barely.
You can pitch pennies against the wall and have a slight advantage. I'm looking for something, that's going to really help our ratepayers.
Sure.
And so if there's someone, we've got some friends in higher places now. I don't know if there's one of those friends that we should be talking to see if they can't apply pressure to SDG&E to move this ball over the finish line.
We'll take a look into that.
Okay,
Right.
thanks. Any other business?
I guess the only thing I would just add that the next meeting is Monday, April 12th.
Okay.
Yeah, Glenn, is that at the same time as a finance committee, or do we know yet?
I'll have to look into that. It might be. So we'll have to look, because I think James may be requested at both meetings. So,
Yeah, and Ryan and Susan may be there too for their capital items.
yeah, because that's a part of the budget presentations at the finance committee, maybe at the same time. We'll look into it and we'll resolve it and we'll get back with the two of you.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, directors.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.